Mm-hmm.
So I always touch on that because that it affects so many women of faith, and a lot of my clients are women of faith, and so we go there because that's part of the healing process. So,
I have a personal experience with that too. So let's go there this evening. Let's go there.
all right.
Hello, everybody. You've been eavesdropping. You've been listening. We couldn't wait to get started on this conversation. It is a conversation that is near and dear to my heart. I can remember years ago, I want to say almost 30 years ago now, I worked in the field of public relations, field of social marketing, but most people recognize it as public relations. And one of the pro bono accounts our agency had was a rape crisis center. My goodness. Uh, you sometimes you can't believe it unless you live it in terms of the different types of abuse that occur. But this show is bringing solutions. It's bringing faith. It's bringing hope. In fact, using the slogan that we developed for the Crisis Center, we say, where there's help, there's hope. So we are here today to bring some hope. So listen, this is About This Life with your host, Anne Marie. And I am so pleased to have Charlene Quint on the show today as my guest. Charlene, I love it. I love it. And what I love and a perspective that you're bringing to the show is your legal expertise because so many people, I would say women predominantly, but we have to acknowledge that men go through it too. But women predominantly, when you find yourself in an abusive situation, you don't know where to turn to in terms of legal issues and how to handle it. And it can feel like the weight of the world is on you. So tell us, first of all, let's start off in terms of what type of law do you practice?
Well, I practice family law, and I primarily focus on helping women get out of abusive relationships, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a relationship, with child is often involved. I often have to do orders of protection. Before this, I've been at this now for 9 years. But before
Mhm.
this, I was at a large corporate Chicago law firm, and I did corporate things. And before that, I worked for a federal judge. So this is starting my 25th year of being an attorney, and I just feel blessed to be able to use that to really help women get out of these situations.
Okay, I want to start with a Chicago law firm first because we have this image. How many of us have watched those law shows right on TV? And we go around and we have an image of what a lawyer looks like and the lifestyle that they have and all of the money that rolls into a lawyer's office. So give us the background in terms of the reality of it.
Oh my goodness, it's so much less glamorous than what they show on TV. I mean, it's long
Yes.
hours, and if you've got any law school debt, you're paying that off, and you're clearing like $10 a month after you pay your law school loans off, and so it's really not nearly as glamorous as they make it sound on TV, and a lot of them are in smaller law firms, just ma and pa law firms, and you're just this is the third generation oftentimes, and so it's just it's nothing like they
So
show on TV.
it's nothing like they show on TV because I always thought, okay, can I get a wardrobe? But if my wardrobe could look like that, the way the
But
way that Hollywood, that's how Hollywood does it. It's just like glamour walks across
oh,
and
that's right, that's
yes,
Hollywood. Yeah.
and that they forgot the student loans, that part. That
Yeah.
part. So you're trying to make a living and you're trying to make a living. And I am going to just assume that you are wonderful at what you do in this law firm and that you are phenomenal. And that when people encounter Charlene, they think you have everything going for you, except not quite. What was not going for you to make you change over to family
Right.
law?
Well, that's a great question. I was in my own abusive relationship for I was in a 20-year marriage, and when I divorced a narcissist, he was not only a narcissist but also a sociopath, as I found out later. But it was the worst experience of my life, and I tell women this all the time: it'll be the worst experience of your life to get out from under these people because they don't let you go easily. And after I got out, I was pretty much non-functional. I actually took some time off of work because I thought I'm gonna commit malpractice because I can't even focus on anything other than survival. So and I took some time and I did a lot of soul searching and praying, and what do I do next with this experience? And I felt led to help other women do this
Okay.
because I felt despite what I had gone through, I was blessed because I had a law degree and I had a way to earn income and I had some resources. So, God and I had this conversation because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
do this. The conversation went something like, "Hey, I'm calling you to be a warrior for women in the courtroom." And I said, "Oh Lord, you've got the wrong girl. The courtroom it's a nasty place, and you've seen the TV,
Yeah,
you've seen the
it's
TV.
emotional.
It's
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 emotional.
very yeah, it's and there's snakes in there, and I was like, that's just not me. Lord, I'm just your girl that just wants to sing Kumbaya and everybody get along. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
because I had taught at a school, at a university, and I said, I'd love to just go back to teaching or something like that because I love young people. And he said, nope, nope, you're my girl. And because you have the law degree, which I gave you, by the way, you're welcome.
Right, right.
And you have the experience that I brought you through, by the way, you're welcome. And you have
Yes,
some resources now that this is over. You're welcome. And so I'm calling you to be a warrior in the courtroom. I said, Lord, I'm not a warrior. And he goes, I know, I made you, so I'm going to make you one. So you remember it's me and not you.
exactly.
Oh boy. So I thought, okay,
Exactly. It's God and not you. But
that's
hang on
right.
a moment because we introduced some terms here. Narcissistic, sociopath. I
Mhm.
mean, is this our opinions of our ex-spouses because we're just mean-spirited people, or is this a bona fide diagnosis? What is a narcissist? Go ahead and explain it.
That's a great question. No, we had gone to therapists over the course of our marriage, and that was the diagnosis that the therapist gave. But of course, I didn't know what that was. Did I bother to look it up? No, I just thought he was just kind of selfish or whatever. But really, the narcissist, it's a diagnosed disorder, a personality disorder, which means it's a permanent, long-standing personality disorder, and the primary characteristics are they are not they have no empathy for others, so they don't really care about other people, and they have a grandiose sense of themselves. They really want what they want, and they don't care how
They're
other
always right.
right. They're always right. And they look at other people as objects to use as a means to an end. So if you have one of these people in your life, they surround themselves with people that they are going to use to get what they want. So, you know,
Or people that they want to impress.
oh, yes, right. Yes.
Yeah.
They
They
want to
they
impress so
want
that,
people to see them as successful. And is it true like they would make you feel smaller than so that they can seem like the hero, like the
That
larger than life personality?
that's right. For some reason, they do not have the internal um, self-control or self-confidence. So they build themselves up by making other people look small, and it's because they feel they're superior to others. And so if they make other people look small and insult them, then
Mhm.
they feel better about themselves, which is kind of, it's sad, but that's who they are. So, and that's it's not conducive to therapy. It's not conducive to medicine. There's really, and we know that, counseling doesn't work because people don't, counseling only works if people want to change, right? So,
It only
so
works if they want to admit that there's a situation with themselves and they want to take
right.
responsibility.
Right. And so they don't. So they play the blame game. It's always somebody else's fault because they have to be perfect, right? They can't stand that any part of themselves is less than perfect. So everything that ever goes wrong is somebody else's fault. So it's really a difficult thing to
Okay.
live with for not only the spouses but also for the children, because they get it as well. And then the
Tell us a little
sociopaths.
tell
uh,
us a little bit about the difficulty in living with it. And you let me know if I'm going down a trail. Okay, you could tell me, Anne Marie, just back off a little bit because I tend to go deep
No, that's
on
okay
this
because
show because there's different levels of abuse. There's the
sure,
emotional
yeah,
abuse, physical abuse, and so on and so forth. So
right,
what
yeah.
what was it like? Because after all, you're a Chicago attorney.
Well, I'm actually from a small town in the middle of a cornfield in downstate Illinois, and so I actually went to law school because I really wanted the Lord to use this, but I went to law school because of this situation. So the day before we were supposed to get married, before our wedding day, I I was handed this prenuptial agreement that was 28 pages long. And I sat around the table at this big Chicago firm, and that was my husband's firm that he used, and it was very one-sided. And he had already convinced me to quit my job, and I had a 5-year-old that I was supporting from a previous marriage. So I, that's the other thing. If you think someone's being nice to you, if they're a narcissist, they're only being nice because they want something from you. So he wanted me to quit my job. So I really had no other option. Obviously the invitations were
Mhm.
already out and I had no job, and I had a 5-year-old to support, and I had this prenuptial agreement set in front of me. And I thought, wow, nobody around
Mm.
this table except the lawyers are going to be happy because this is not how you start a marriage. So that's, I guess that's one example of financial abuse. So we talked about, the different types of abuse. So financial abuse is one of the ones that we don't talk about as much, and people don't even recognize that. I certainly didn't know what financial abuse was. Um, but you know, the the statistics show that 99% of abusive relationships have financial abuse in them. So if you're married to a higher earning spouse, that often
Yes.
means that the lesser earning spouse doesn't have any access to funds. They
To
don't have an
resources.
account. The house isn't their name. The
Yes.
cars aren't in their name. The investment accounts aren't in their name. They come with hat in hand. Can I please have some money for groceries? And then they're required to give the expenses. It's like filling out an expense report. So you feel like you're an employee versus instead of a spouse. So, financial abuse is one of the things that's
And
so,
they don't have any, it's a power struggle when we talk about financial abuse,
yes.
because then it becomes the narcissist wants to have control
Oh
and
yeah,
the
it's all
decision
about,
making.
you're right.
Yes, the
Yeah, it's
decision making in the home.
it's all about power and control. The whole people ask, well, what is abuse? Well, it's this need to gain and maintain power and control over another person. And so they use all sorts of different means necessary. Money, of course, we know money is power. And so that's one of the primary ways that they do it. The other kind of the opposite end of that is sometimes you'll have a narcissist that refuses to work, and so puts the
Mm.
whole burden on the spouse to support the family. They can work, but they just refuse to go out. So now, the spouse has to support the family, and they're just kind of a parasite that lives off of them. So that's kind of the two opposite ends of
The two
how
opposites.
how the money abuse, how financial abuse works.
I want to ask you this question. And one of the reasons why I'm doing all of this background and this building up to how you're helping women is because very often a woman will get the question, well, why didn't you just leave? Or didn't you know when you met him? That's those sorts of
Oh
questions.
boy.
So,
Yeah.
my question to help our viewers understand that perspective. We're looking at financial, we're looking at lack of resources. What I heard is a power imbalance. Now, the thing that would love for your reflections on, based on what you do, physical versus emotional. Because if, for example, law enforcement is involved, or you go to a neighbor for help, what if a neighbor or law enforcement sees a bruise? If you're black and blue, to them, that's evidence. Okay, I need to take action. Emotional abuse, though. And I would love for you to talk about that just a little bit because so many people know about abuse, but they don't understand the emotional abuse side of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. The fact is that emotional abuse occurs in 100% of abusive situations.
Mm,
100%. Because
mm,
abuse escalates, and over time, but it starts with emotional abuse, and it can escalate very quickly, but that's always prevalent because the whole idea is to hurt the other person's spirit, right? To have control and power over someone, you have to put them down, and so that their spirit is damaged. And so the abusers spend a great deal of effort in trying to destroy the person's spirit. So what does
yes.
that look like? There's a lot of different, I mean, the tactics that they use is only limited by the abuser's imagination. But let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about some of the top ones. Let's talk about name calling and insults. So probably you're worthless. Pick the name that you can.
Who would want you?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
worthless. Who would want you? So that's just one one way to do that. But let's talk about lying and deception, because all of that's one of the characteristics of abusers, is that they are liars and deceivers. So we wouldn't get into these relationships if we thought we were going to
If we knew.
sign up for 25 years of abuse. No, but they pretend to be these wonderful people when you start with your relationship. And that's why they call that first stage the love bombing stage, believe it or not.
Yes.
And then, but the whole idea is to get that person in their target emotionally and financially connected, so they get their claws in them. And then, when they get their target to say, I do, or let's get a house together, or let's have a child together, or let's start a business together, that's when you're dependent upon another person to fulfill their half of the partnership. And that's when it comes out, right? Usually right after the wedding,
Yes.
right after you have a child, or right after you have a house, because now you're intertwined. But the lying and deception, he's not going to tell you where his finances are, especially if you're getting a divorce. That's a lot. there's
You're good
there's
at hiding money.
Oh, they sure are. Things that you would think, okay, you would certainly tell someone if you're married or not when you start dating them, but no, they'll say that they're single or going through a divorce when they're very much married. So that's key. Then another a piece of emotional divorce or a tactic is called gaslighting. And a lot of
Mm.
people haven't even heard of that. I certainly hadn't when I was in my marriage. Gaslighting is when they do something or say something that is damaging and then deny that they've done it to make you feel like you're losing touch with reality or, you're
Deny
questioning.
that you've done it, deny that they've done it, and make it seem like you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it works. So you feel like, oh man, I wish I would have my video camera on my phone on 24/7 because I wanted to catch that, but of course it's gone and come and gone. And so, you feel like how can you just said that and now you're denying it. So it's that gaslighting. Another thing they do on, is projection, which is accusing their victim of the thing that they're most guilty of themselves. So
Mhm.
if he's hiding money, he'll accuse her of hiding money. If he's abusive, he'll accuse her of being abusive. If he's lying, he'll accuse her of lying. One of the most common accusations is that she's having an affair, which almost always means he's having an affair or has had an affair.
Yes, yes.
Or that she has a mental illness. Okay, you're the one with the narcissist.
So
Diagnosis.
it's like a manipulation of the truth. And also it is what one can say a facade because
Absolutely.
it's keeping up an image, public image out there. So one of the questions people always want to know, okay, so why'd you stay? Or why 20 years? Why not 1 year or 2 years? Why 20?
Well, and that's a great question, and a lot of people have that question. But here's the thing: the question should be to him, "Why are you abusing your wife?" Not to
Mm.
her, "Why did you stay so long?" We get the question wrong. But to answer the question that's so many people want to know, the number one reason why women stay so long is the lack of finances, because in 99% of the time there's financial abuse, right? So,
Yes.
so women who have given up a job or career so she can stay home and raise the children because, of course, their husband was like, well, you can stay home and raise the kids. Won't that be great? Because I make enough money for both of us. And you think, oh, this is a wonderful thing. But
Hmm.
in the back of his mind, he's thinking, and now I have all the power because once she has given up her job and given up her career and has no money, yes, he does have all the power. So when I hear that from women who my clients almost always
Hmm.
have done this, and like, yep, that's what they start with, and it sounds so benevolent and
Yeah. Oh, you're so good and you're
yes,
blessed and you
you
get
can.
to be home, in the
Mhm.
house and more time with the kids. And so basically you're giving up your autonomy. And then God comes by and God says, go help these women. So
Mhm.
talk to us, Charlene, about the
Yeah.
ways in which you can help someone who's going through this experience.
Right. Well, the first thing that we do, I also have in addition to my law practice, which it's more of a holistic law practice. And most lawyers
Hmm.
will, they get you in and out of court and you get stamped with a divorce. But I realize that people need healing, right? We need to be a counselor in every sense of the word. So I do a lot of encouraging and
Hmm.
healing and helping people through this. I also facilitate a support group and Bible study that's nationwide. I started it during COVID. I actually started with a local domestic violence organization back in 2015, and then they stopped doing it in COVID. And I thought, well, this is when we really need it because now you're
Yeah.
stuck at home with crazy. So I asked my church if they would let me um, have one and host it at church. And then, because it's all Zoom, we were able to have it nationwide. So I've been doing that. Um, it's basically a 6-month program. And we start with recognizing recognizing the different forms of abuse, because a lot of people say, oh, he's got a big personality or this or that. And, they don't recognize they're in a toxic relationship and it's not going to get any better. So we go through the different forms and then we go through the different characteristics of a narcissistic personality and a sociopathic personality. And if you don't have one of those, you're somewhere on the scale of abuse and control. So we talk about that. We talk about the effect that it has on women, not only physically, because every single woman, according to the studies, have a degree of PTSD, whether in most cases it's moderate to severe, how it affects us. And then we talk about, okay, well, this isn't going to change because, right, counseling is what do you want to do with the rest of your life, right? You've got how many years to live on this planet? How do you want to spend that? And that's really their decision. If they want to stay in, that's, we give them, some tools to help, but most of the time they'll say, okay, this isn't,
they reach a tipping point.
Yeah, right.
You've got to reach it. There's a catalytic event.
Right.
Where?
And it's usually when the children are affected, right? The reasons why we stay, money, we think he's going to change. We've been praying about it for years and years. We think God's going to come in and zap him. And that's really not how God works on these things when you pray about it. We believe all these things that are not true, like he's going to go back to being that wonderful person that we knew when he was in the love bombing stage. But we don't know that the stages, once they go into the next stage, they never go back, right? It goes. So most women leave when they finally realize they can't protect their children anymore. And that's when they say, okay, I need to leave. And then we talk about how to safely remove yourself from this. You need a legal plan. We need an emotional support plan. You need a network. You need your emotional support network. We need a spiritual plan, right? Because this is a spiritual battle.
Let's pause here for a moment. Let's get down to the brass and tacks. Is that the expression I'm looking for?
That's right. Get down to the brass tacks.
The nitty-gritty.
Yep.
When we say all of these plans, an emotional plan, a legal plan, I'm thinking about the person who might be listening and helping that person. What does that entail? I mean, are you secretly recording your spouse? Do you have a network that's going? I mean, is that even legal to record somebody without their knowledge? So what are these plans involved? Are you stashing money somewhere in a secret account? Give us the brass and tacks.
Okay. So first of all, especially if there's physical abuse, you do need a physical safety plan. And for example, don't get into an argument in the kitchen, because there's a lot of things in the kitchen that you can use as a weapon, right? There's the knives and the cutting block and everything like that. So there's a safety plan. Maybe you need a word with your kids, a code word to say, okay, when we say watermelon, everybody leaves and goes next door because our next door neighbor has agreed that we can go there. Or we're going to meet at such and such a place once we say watermelon. Or maybe you have an extra set of keys for the car, because he's already taken the keys for the car and you can't get out. So you have an extra set of keys. Maybe you have a bag packed someplace so that when you leave, you're going to have a set of clothes. So things like that to make sure that physically you and your children are safe. And because not everybody can leave immediately. And sometimes you have to stay in these toxic situations until you are able to physically leave. So that's what we talk about when we have a physical safety plan. But yeah, financial plan, that may mean, okay, we're storing up some money on the side so that you can maybe rent an apartment or have some food for groceries, money for groceries, and maybe that's, for your legal fees or what have you. So that's, putting money aside. That means, getting a separate account at a separate bank so that there's no ties in your name alone. There's no need to put anybody else's name on there. So then, unless you're going to put your mom on there,
Right.
that's a
But I've got a funny story. Funny, not funny. A funny story because I think in the Black community, and maybe this is for all communities as well, is that one of the things that the mothers and the aunties will tell you when you're getting married, they would always say, have some money to the side. And when you're getting married and you have all these love images in your eyes, the money to the side, what's mine is his, what's his is mine, da 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 da. But from just a generational going back into the culture, it was always that idea of, just keep some money to yourself. They never said why. Okay. It never gave you a reason why. But they
Yep.
would always say, have some money on the side. I'm just like, okay.
Yep, those are wise mamas and aunties. That's right.
Hmm.
Good for them. Yeah, because you just never know. Again, because they're such deceivers and liars. You think you're marrying Mr., Prince Charming, and you
Yeah.
find, oh my goodness, he's worse than an ugly frog. So yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a great thing. But then the emotional support, have your group of your network, right? Have your moms and your aunties and your friends, your safe people, right? If they're not safe, don't tell them about this, because then it's worse.
But
But no,
here's the struggle. Here's the struggle. And you tell me, in terms of the clients that walk through your door and the women that you're helping, is that the spouse has generally isolated you. So your best friends you no longer interact with because you've just spent weeks and months and years being told, oh, that person is no good to hang around and you shouldn't do that. And there is always something to come up when you're trying to have a girls' weekend, right?
yeah, oh
So
yeah,
that they've formed a cocoon so that really you don't have that network to go. And
yeah.
then there's the faith factor. You can even comment about that because the church's response is always like, God loves marriage, so stay in a marriage, you know. What's your experience with that, with the women that you work with in counseling?
Well, yes, many times they are isolated, or they're what is very, very common, and in fact, I would say it's so common it's universal, is that the husbands, and I don't want to paint it like it's always one-sided, but the statistics show that 90% of abusers are men. So that's why I talk in
Right.
he. Um, but the abuser will work on social alienation and parental alienation. So he is going around telling everybody what a horrible person you are, and who people who you might have thought were friends or were, co-friends, like couples or something like that. He's already told everyone, oh, she's having an affair. She has a mental illness. She's doing this, she's doing that, which is a complete lie. But people want to believe their friend. They want to believe the person's that's sitting next to them in church, or their coworker, or the guy at the country club, whatever. And they like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And so then, you've already been slandered before you get it. And he'll do the same thing to the kids. Your mom is leaving because she's, and the whole thing. So
Yeah.
you're right. Exactly. It takes so much fortitude to say, all right, I am not going to live in this relationship anymore. And this is one reason why. And you are absolutely right. The church does not always support women who are trying to free themselves of abuse. And we go into a deep, deep dive on what the Bible actually says, because we know that God wants us to have an abundant life, right?
Yes.
Here's the
Yes.
two mission statements. Satan says in the book of John, I have come to steal, kill, and destroy, right? And God says, I've come so that you can have an abundant life. All right. So
Mhm.
we have two completely opposite mission statements, and you can tell who's on whose side. Again, John is great because in
Mhm.
the epistles, he says, well, we can tell who's on whose side because those who are of God, they can't keep on sinning because the Holy Spirit is in them to convict them and keep it. But here you go. Here's the people, the children of the devil will continue to keep on sinning because that's who their father is. So we have these two opposite sides. But then I'm glad you brought this up, because if we look at 2 Timothy 3,
Mhm.
there is a great description by Paul. Paul's writing to Timothy, who's a young pastor at the church of Ephesus at the time. And he's saying, in the last days, there are going to be people that are abusive and lovers of money, and they're going to be treacherous. And he goes through this whole laundry list, and he describes abusers to the T. And then he
Mhm.
says, have nothing to do with them.
Yes.
And he doesn't say, oh, except for you, poor wise, because God doesn't love you. You're stuck with these people. But the rest of you people have nothing to do with these horrible, treacherous people. No, he's saying that because he knows that they are so dangerous and so destructive, not only to a spouse, but to the family and to the church and to everybody they come in contact with. If you've come in contact with one of these people in the job, in the workforce, you know what a mess they make. And you can just look at their lives in the rearview mirror. There's a wake of destruction, whether it's in their home or their communities or their work. So
Yeah.
many places throughout the Bible, um, God tells how marriages are supposed to be, how a husband should love his wife like Christ loves the church, which is the sacrificial love of laying down his life. And then he, you know, contrast that with, wow, and then there's these treacherous people you should have nothing to do with. He
You
actually,
know,
Ezra tells people to get a divorce, because
it
they married horrible people.
it's funny because you're quoting like Ephesians, but the interesting thing is the narcissist will quote the part of the scripture in Ephesians that talks about wives submit to your husbands.
Oh,
But they leave off the second part of the same scripture in the same verse that says husbands love your wives, right? So they
absolutely.
only give it half to you. And very often you will find, especially in faith-based households, that your faith is weaponized against you.
Yep.
And that's another reason why women get to 20, 25, 30 years in a relationship, because everybody's saying to this woman, okay, you're a child daughter of God. This is what you're supposed to do. So those are all of the different things that pressures to stay. One of the things that you mentioned is this being on Zoom and being able to have a Bible study and reach people that way. But you also have a purpose and a mission to reach churches and businesses and organizations.
Mhm.
Why that group of people? Why that audience? What do you hope to accomplish there?
Well, that's a great question. I hope to change the culture of the church and business organizations and
Mhm.
and other parachurch organizations, so that we recognize that God values his daughters as much as he values his sons, and that he wants us to be in these loving and life-giving relationships, not abusive, toxic relationships. And so I have reached out to churches, because when we reach out to, for example, a pastor or the denomination of a pastor, and can teach them what the Bible actually does preach about domestic abuse, and how the church can come alongside the victim and help her and hold the abuser accountable, and that's that affects thousands of people versus
Mhm.
the one-on-one. Yes, I can help a single woman get out of a divorce, but I would love to help thousands of women and getting to a church denomination or the head of churches, the pastors and the elders and the
Mm-hmm.
leaders to so that the culture of that whole church and that whole community changes. It's like we need to rethink about how we view this marriage stuff. It's not just a life prison sentence. It should be a place where there's growth and love. And to the credit of the American Baptist churches, they've invited me several times over the course of the last several months to speak to not only their regional groups, but also at the denominational USA level. So it's that is the cry of my heart, to be able to
Right.
change the culture of the church. And I also speak to business organizations, because there's a lot of the things that business organizations can do for their female employees to help them along too, and as they go through these challenges. The numbers are overwhelming when we think about the numbers. We know that 35% of women will experience rape or stalking or physical abuse in her lifetime. But in addition to that, 48% of women will deal with coercive control or emotional and verbal abuse. So that
Mm-hmm.
is half the women have gone
Mm-hmm.
through this mess, and we're not recognizing that this is an epidemic. And
Yes.
and the numbers inside communities of faith are the same as those numbers outside communities of faith, except that the women in communities of faith stay in abusive relationships longer for just the reasons you're talking about, the spiritual abuse, which is why I tell every woman, dive into your own scripture yourself, not just what someone else is telling you. You
Right.
dive into yourself and see what the truth is, because it gets twisted a lot, especially
It
in this.
does,
So,
especially in a paternalistic um and in the church being paternalistic as it is, and it takes a pastor who's secure in himself
mhm,
and
yeah,
having a heart for this work, to
yeah.
be open to even addressing it. So kudos for you for um, introducing that concept, and that the faith community has a role to play. And the other thing that I always wonder about, because it seems to me to be harsh in a way, is people tend to think, okay, the woman needs healing, she needs recovery, and that's so very true, right? But who talks about the men? And how are the men being prepared and groomed? And because, yeah, that woman leaves, but guess what? Another woman, it just sets up for another woman to be hurt. And the cycle repeats itself.
Right. Well, we need to change the narrative in our churches, in our society, in our culture, about what's acceptable for men to do. So yeah, men get groomed from childhood, saying, well, yeah, you need to be the dominant one, and she has to submit. If there are, some churches will say that, and so they hear, and I'm going to call them lies. They hear these lies that they're entitled to this power and control and abuse over somebody else. So they're hearing lies that they're
Mhm.
entitled. And then the women, on the other hand, are hearing lies. Oh, well, I guess this is my lot in life. I have to do this. And so it's just we need to change the narrative on what God wants, so that they're healthy, so that we have healthy relationships, right? We do
Absolutely.
healthy relationships that are life-giving and a good example for the children, because we know that we get these passed down. The boys who are in have been raised in abusive relationships are 10 times more likely to become an abuser themselves, and girls are 6 times more likely to choose an abusive partner. So we need to get this right, and that's
Absolutely.
and that's that's on the church. that they need to do it. And that's something that they should be the leaders in this, not, you know, following in the back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So share bears, the acronym BEARS, bears. What is bears all
Yeah.
about?
So that's my little, I'm from Chicago, right? So we support the Bears no matter who
Okay.
they are. No, yeah, yeah, we haven't been to the Super Bowl and won one since 1985, but this is our year. I mean, the little
We
Cubbies, we
will see. And I'm hoping for the Washington Commanders now. They're looking good.
yeah. So this is kind of my an acronym to help organizations, whether it's a faith-based organization or a business or what have you, to help women. So B stands for believe her, right? Just
Mhm.
so often, someone comes in, they've worked for you or they worked for the church or something, and she comes up with this story and they're like, yeah, we just don't believe you. I'm like, wait, you entrust millions of dollars to this person. She's running your company or she's doing this and you don't believe her? How can that be? Is she known to be a liar and no, she's not, but they just don't believe her. So the first thing I say, believe her, validate her when she comes in, just assume that she's telling the truth because otherwise you would assume she's telling the truth. So believe her. The E stands for educate yourselves. We have so many misconceptions about domestic abuse and so many organizations and faith places are just uneducated. So do some digging, educate yourselves, take a class, read my book. My next book that's coming out is going to be specifically towards pastors. And I'm going to co-author that with two other pastors who their passion is
Mhm.
this as well. But read, do some deep dive into what the causes of are, what the tactics are and how it affects people. And so that you're not sucked
Right.
into played. I mean, look, abusers play pastors and church leaders just like they played us back in, like
Hmm.
they know
Hmm.
they're naive. They're just gonna feel sorry for him because he's gonna play the pity card.
Yeah.
100%. Poor me, my wife left me. Well, they always play the pity card when there's any consequences to their bad actions. So anyway, educate
True.
yourself.
Okay.
Um,
A.
is hold abusers accountable, right? Hold them accountable. Don't let them play the pity card and get away with it. So our churches and need to be a safe haven for the sheep, the flock of the sheep, not a safe place for wolves to come in and get it. So make it a safe place for the sheep, not for the wolves. So we need to hold them accountable. And sometimes that means, you know what, we've talked to you, Mr. So-and-so, and you are still not getting it. So you are not welcome here anymore. You need to go to another place. And we'll walk alongside you and try to get you to see the truth in this. But if you're still being the same person that you were before, we need to have this a safe place for her and her children. And that's going to do a whole lot because one, it's going to tell the kids mom's not the wrong, because that's the story dad's been telling the whole time, right? Your mom's in the wrong. It's all her fault. I didn't do anything. So the kids are going to see the church is supporting mom. Other people are going to say, oh, so all that stuff he said about her being doing this and do that, that's not right. That's okay. And what he will do is divide the church. I mean, 100% every time he will divide the church. So
Yeah.
holding accountable and saying, no, this is going to be a safe place for her, and you can find another place. That we need to do. It's the same place in places of employment. We need to make sure that when she goes to work, it's a safe place. So where am I at? Oh, A. Um,
R. Okay, so come to R.
refer her to people that are professionals in the area of domestic abuse, because nobody at work is going to be a domestic abuse professional, and most of your pastors and people on staff at places of worship are not professionals at that, and you can give some really bad advice.
Hmm.
That's not just bad, it's harmful. Like telling a woman to go back to her abusive husband, and then she ends up, getting beat up or dead. So refer them to people who are domestic abuse professionals, that are trauma-informed counselors, that are lawyers, that have that know, that are aware of domestic violence, to domestic abuse organizations in the area that will have resources.
Hmm.
Refer out to people that know what they're doing, because they don't. And then the last one, S, support. Support her. Um,
Yes.
every church has some little fund to help people in trouble, right? So the very least you can do is support her emotionally and check in with her every once in a while and say, I'm on your side, or can I go to the courthouse with you? Can I help you get an order of protection and sit with you while you're telling the judge? Because that's an intimidating process. But outside of just emotional support, she's probably needing groceries because she
Yes.
doesn't have the financial wherewithal. It would be great to have, like, he often does not want to give up the house, right? Because it's his, it's mine, that's their thought process. So she may have to move out. And so, give her, having a fund where there's a couple months rent in there, so she and her children can have a safe place to live. Or if you have a group of families, to say, hey, come and stay with me for a while. You can stay with me in January, and then move on to the Joneses in February, and the Jacksons in March. And my husband and I, my new husband, who's wonderful, that's our, and people know that my house is a safe house. So we have
Yes.
coming in and out all the time. So we bought this home. God blessed us, and we have 3 bedrooms that are usually, when it's not Christmas time or some other holiday, they're usually available. So come in and stay until you can find a place to stay. So and maybe a group of guys that come and just move her furniture out, so that she can move out and not be intimidated. She can move out when he's at work. So having that group of people that can support, and have a support group or a Bible study like I'm doing.
Yeah.
Early this first half of the year, my workbook is coming out, so churches can have their own Bible study and support group.
Tell us about your book. Tell us about your book.
Oh,
What's the
well,
name of what's the name of the first one? Because you're saying the
so
second
the
one's coming
first
out.
one, can you see it here? Oh,
No, it's coming across blurry, but I can put it in the link.
okay.
I could put
So,
it in a link when we upload yeah.
yeah, it's called Overcoming the Narcissist, Sociopath, Psychopath, and Other Domestic Abusers. It's about 4 pounds, about 600 pages. And the idea is to give a woman everything she needs to know, from, soup to nuts, on how to, recognize abuse, remove herself safely, and recover and become the woman that she was designed to be. So there's a lot of healing in there. And the workbook, which is coming out, is really designed to go along with this. And so that in either individual study or our group, we go through this and then have discussions, and there's some own time for reflection, and some homework and stuff, so that people can really, we heal best when we're in a community, right? When we can be with other people who understand. We don't have to explain. So many women I hear, it's like, if you haven't been through it, you really you,
Mm.
you, you don't understand. And so they're trying to share with their friends, and their friends are like, well, why didn't you just leave? I'm like,
Yeah. That part. And I have to say a couple of things in reaction, Charlene, because you know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I'm
yep,
one of the women. I'm one
yep,
of the women, and it was not a happy moment at the time, but I could remember distinctly moving out and sleeping First of all, grown woman renting a room from somebody else's house.
Yeah.
And another experience, evolution of that is my first apartment. I had no money. I had money to pay the rent, but I didn't have any money for furniture. I slept on the floor. And it was a basement apartment. And my testimony is I did have friends from church, no questions asked. One of them bought me a couch. I have that couch in my house now to this day, and it's been over 10 years. And somebody else bought me dishes. And somebody else just bought me a mattress so I could get up off of the floor. Because the what I hear you saying, and what is often the experience, is that you can be so successful in so many aspects of your life,
Mhm.
but there's something going on in your life, in your relationship. And um, it's difficult to navigate. So I want to give another resource, and then I want you and I to um, do something. I'll explain it in terms of closure. The other resource,
Can I just say,
mhm,
and you're a great example of this, men, by and large, the women who've gotten themselves into these situations, they are wonderful, lovely women, and that's why they were targeted. We are we are givers, and we are giving, and we are forgiving, and we invest in relationships, and uh, these people are just lovely, lovely women, and many of them are that faith is very important to them, and so they're a target for abusers. But I also want to encourage them, don't change. Those are wonderful God-given um, gifts that we have in these beautiful souls. What we do need, though, is discernment. And that's
absolutely.
how we ended up with these people. So don't don't change. Don't decide to be mean and I'm gonna, put my armor on and no one's gonna get inside anymore. Don't change. Just entrust that to someone who is worthy, um, and use discernment to determine that. That's the only thing that we as ladies have seemed to need to work on in our
Discernment and a good lawyer, Charlene.
amen.
Discernment and a good lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Let
apologize.
me
I interrupted you, but I just had to sneak that in.
Well, you went exactly where I wanted to go. So let me reverse the order because I wanted you to talk to the women, and you can again, in terms of closure. I wanted to talk to the men because if by chance a man is even listening this long, because by now the true narcissist would have turned off, shut
Oh yeah.
down, and so on
Yep.
and so forth. But maybe somebody, a friend of a friend, can refer them to this episode, and that what I sense, what I discern, what I have come to know, whether through experience or working with other people, working with professionals such as yourself and counsels and so on and so forth, there's something that's broken inside that narcissist. And it could be they were not always that way. And there is a movement afoot where, as women, we are getting in touch with uh, our inner selves and the young girl, and we're doing all of that work and going back to the little girl and tracing our belief systems and making some adjustments. I dare say, men, if you're listening, there's something in the way that happened in your social conditioning of you when you were a little boy. And our society has a way of telling you to stuff it inside. Strong men don't cry. That's a lie. They tell you all of these things that one has to wonder, why are they saying that? And it's because somebody taught it to them. But now it's time for you to stop, pause, and question those things. And here's why. because the relationship might be over, the relationship with the spouse and so on and so forth. But one, you deserve happiness too. And you're not going to find that place of happiness and peace in your soul and with your God until such time that you confront what you've been through. And the second one is your sons are watching. If you are a father, your sons and your daughters are watching. And that's not a legacy that you want to leave for them. So that's my plea, if you would, to men who you recognize something is not just quite right. It's time to go get your healing. And if you, Charlene, can talk to the women about why they should go get their healing.
Right. Well, women need healing from these, because just like the men have been sold a pack of lies and believed it, that they're entitled to act that way, women have been told a pack of lies too. And so we need to get to the truth. And truth is, when we actually identify those lies and reject them and replace them with God's truth, you are loved. You are his daughters. You are worthy of respect, and worthy of a wonderful life, and worthy of being loved. And when we actually believe that, when it gets down into our souls that we are worthy creatures, we can become who we were designed to be, which is however you were made. I mean, some people were
Yes.
made to be an artist because that's in their DNA, and other
Mhm.
people have the ability to, the world's best computer programmer. Whatever you were made to be, we all are put down here on earth for a mission. And I would encourage each person to do some soul searching, find out what you were made to be. Mark Twain has this great saying, is that the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why.
You
And
find out why.
yeah, so find out why you have a
Find out
purpose. Even if you've gone through this. And I mean, I was in my 50s when I went through this. We have ladies in our 70s and the 20s that are in our group. And it doesn't matter how young or old you are, you've got a purpose, and do some soul searching and find out why, because that is the key to this abundant life that God has designed for us. And
the abundant life that God has promised us. I would like to say there's a third group that I didn't think of until you were speaking, and that is our friends and our family. The worst thing you can ask somebody is, why did you stay that long?
amen.
Or why didn't you? Because until you have walked in somebody's shoes, you really eh, don't judge people. Be there to support them. And I will leave them at that. Tell us the name of your book again, one more time.
Yep, it's called Overcoming the Narcissist, Sociopath, Psychopath, and Other Domestic Abusers. I will try to can I
No, that's fine. What I can do, don't worry about that. I'll put it in the show notes so somebody can have. There we go. There we
yeah,
go.
because I had my background blurred on Zoom. But anyway, here it is, and you can
There we
put
go.
it in the show notes. So you can see it's a couple inches thick, and the new
Okay.
one will be the same title, just for the workbook. And then it'll probably take a couple years, and eventually I'm going to come out with a book for church leaders and pastors on how to biblically address domestic abuse when it gets in the church. So
Cool. And I
yeah.
have one more resource. And that other resource, the book is called Boundaries. I always get their names mixed up, the first crisscross with the last, but it's Henry
Counsel and Cloud.
Townsend and Cloud. Henry, one of them is Henry, one of them is John.
Right. Yeah.
But Boundaries, that book will change your life. That book will change your life.
Yeah.
So, I just want to thank you, Charlene, for being my guest today on talking about this important issue,
That's my pleasure.
talking about all of the things that a person needs to consider in terms of exiting any situation that they're in. Thank you for the acronym BEARS to help us move through with that and all of the plans we need to consider. So hopefully this will change some people's lives because this is what this podcast is about. You can find me on About This Life podcast on YouTube. I'm also aboutthislife.podbean.com. All that means is I'm on Apple, Spotify, and all the social media things, all the things. So we are changing our lives one day at a time. Thank you.